On August 7, 2014, a taxi driver pulled up to the St. Regis Resort in Bali. An attractive young American couple leaving the luxury hotel piled their large suitcase into the cab and asked the driver to wait while they checked out. He complied, probably hoping for a nice tip. However, as time went by and the young couple failed to return to the cab, the driver eventually opened his trunk to remove their belongings. That's when he saw blood in his trunk, and it was oozing slowly out of the suitcase. The cab driver called the police, and when they opened the suitcase, they found the body of a woman inside. The young couple was nowhere to be found. Sheila von Wiese-Mack was a wealthy woman. She had been married to renowned composer James L. Macks, who sued a cruise line after being injured on a ship, winning more than $1 million to add to an already lucrative lifestyle. When James Macks passed away in 2006, he left behind a grieving widow, a lot of money, and an 11-year-old daughter, Heather. Heather and her mother had a tempestuous relationship with allegations of abuse on both sides. Heather moved out in 2014, and Sheila decided to take her daughter on a luxury 2-week vacation in an attempt to heal their relationship. Later, Sheila's friends would say that they warned her not to take her daughter out of the country, for they thought that Heather was unstable. Nevertheless, the two arrived at the St. Regis Resort and the trip started out wonderfully. Though, to be fair, the hotel has a private beach, world-class food, multiple swimming pools, and rooms starting at $690 per night, so it's kinda hard to imagine anyone having a bad time. By the way, please be sure to like and subscribe so that one day I might be able to afford like 14 minutes at this place. I'm not kidding, it literally has an in-house butler. Heather and Sheila's trip started out beautifully, but then something odd started to happen. Heather started disappearing for hours at a time. Finally, Sheila woke up one night to find her daughter missing. When she went to the front desk to ask if they had seen Heather leave, the front desk told Sheila that her daughter was probably staying in the other room. What other room? Sheila asked. Why, the other room that had been charged to her credit card, of course. That's when Sheila found out that Heather had invited her boyfriend, 21-year-old Tommy Schaefer, to Bali. Heather had also charged his first-class flight, which cost $12,000, and the room to her mom's credit card. Tommy and Heather were asleep in the room, which had already cost Sheila more than $1,000. Sheila was furious. She and her daughter screamed at each other in the lobby of the St. Regis, and it sounds like the hotel staff was pretty taken aback. One of the hotel staff later told the Daily Mail, "The mother had all the appearances of one of our upmarket guests, but the behavior she and her daughter showed did not belong in our hotel. This does not bode well for my future at the St. Regis, given that I would have to rob a liquor store to afford it." Now, here's where the story gets a little tricky. There were a few different versions of what exactly happened next, how premeditated it was, who said what, and who attacked whom. And at the end of the day, a lot of the stories contradict each other and none of them come from the mouth of the victim. But here's what we do know for sure. On the morning of August 7th, Sheila, her daughter Heather, and Tommy got into a fight in Sheila's hotel room. By the time the fight was over, Sheila had been beaten to death with a heavy glass and metal fruit bowl. The couple packed Sheila's body into a large suitcase, which involved breaking several of her bones and bending her, to quote one police officer, like an accordion. Then the lovers brought the suitcase down to the cab. Here's where their problems started. I mean, aside from being murderers. Tommy and Heather went to the front desk and requested access to Sheila's safety deposit box, which contained some valuables and their passports. However, hotel staff were under strict instructions not to give anyone besides Sheila access to the box. Not knowing what else to do, Heather and Tommy snuck out the back door of the hotel and hopped a different cab, hoping that their American accents and ID would be enough to get them on a plane. They struck out. Now knowing that they were stuck in Indonesia for the foreseeable future, Tommy and Heather went to a nearby motel to lay low. They were caught by police the next day. Eventually, I'm going to tell you a sympathetic version of events. A version of events told by Heather that describes an abusive mother in self-defense gone wrong. But, to be fair, before I tell you that version of the story, let's go through all the other stories that were pulled out first. Story 1. Heather and Tommy claimed that an armed gang had killed Sheila and then taken the two of them hostage. They escaped and hid out in a motel for some reason. That story was shot down pretty fast. For one thing, the St. Regis has CCTV and the armed gang clearly didn't exist. So, Heather switched it up to Story 2. Heather told her mother that she was pregnant. Sheila flew into a rage and attacked her daughter. Tommy hit Sheila with the fruit basket in order to protect his pregnant girlfriend. This story was also debunked because Sheila's emails clearly showed that she had known about the pregnancy for months. This brings us to Story 3. Sheila went wild for no apparent reason and called Tommy a racist slur. Tommy hit her in anger. This story was blown apart when texts between Tommy and Heather revealed that the two had been talking about killing Sheila for some time. If right now you're thinking, well, we all joke about killing our mom sometimes, then A, you should probably stop, and B, you should know that Tommy then sent several messages back and forth with his cousin Robert Bibbs in Chicago, and the two of them debated the best way to kill Sheila. So, spur-of-the-moment self-defense looks a little less likely. When the case went to trial, one thing was made clear. Whoever might have done the planning, it was Tommy who actually wielded the murder weapon. He was given 18 years in an Indonesian prison. Heather was sentenced to 10 years. Later, Robert Bibbs, Tommy's cousin, was sentenced in a Chicago court to 9 years in jail for his work advising Tommy on how to commit murder. Now that Heather and Tommy were both in prison, yet another story came out. This was story number 4.
Came to Bali, my mom found out. I killed her myself. And then I told Tommy that if he did not help me clean the room and get rid of the body, that I would tell the police that he did it. I would pay money to get him arrested.
Heather claimed that she had stolen Tommy's phone and texted back and forth, setting him up for the murder so that she could blackmail him into helping her. Why, do you ask?
When I was 10, my mother killed my father in a hotel in Athens, Greece. 2 weeks before I came to Bali, I found out that she killed my father. And I made it up in my heart, in my mind, my soul, in my blood, in the oxygen running through my body, that I wanted to kill my mother.
This story blew up around the world, but like all the stories before, it too was quickly debunked. Tommy Schaefer stood by his guilty plea, reiterating from prison that he had been the one to kill Sheila. The messages between Tommy and his cousin confirmed that. And the claim that this was a revenge killing is a little hard to swallow given the fact that Heather's father hadn't died under suspicious circumstances. He died from a blood clot in his lung. Heather gave birth to her daughter Stella in prison. Under Indonesian law, she was allowed to keep Stella with her for 2 years before the toddler was given over to a guardian. Stella and Heather will be back together when Heather's prison sentence ends. Tommy Schaefer has become a born-again Christian. He has baptized more than 50 men in prison and says that he is not actively seeking parole. Tommy recently told a reporter from the New Zealand Herald that he knows he is guilty and deserves his punishment and that he will do his best to serve God in prison. The only person that Tommy does not seem to have any love for is his former girlfriend, Heather. Tommy says that while he takes responsibility for his own actions, he nevertheless feels that he was manipulated by Heather, whom he describes to be as a black hole and a sociopath. Heather, meanwhile, is now sticking with her fifth and most convincing story. She tells reporters that her taped video confession was a lie and that she was blackmailed into recording it by Tommy, though why he would do so while maintaining his guilt is unclear. Heather now claims that she endured years of physical and verbal abuse from her mother, Sheila, and that the night of Bali was simply the last in a long history of attacks. Heather claims that Tommy was indeed defending her that night from an alcoholic and serially abusive mother. In spite of his hatred for Heather, Tommy backs up the claim that Sheila was abusive. He claims that he saw Sheila attack her daughter and that she was often drunk. Police records show that before Sheila's death, police had been called to the von Wiese-Mack house 86 times over the past decade. Neighbors say that mother and daughter frequently had screaming fights and would call the cops on each other. Sheila's friends say that she was a good mother and that it was Heather who was abusive and unbalanced. During one of their fights, Heather pushed Sheila and broke her arm. On the other hand, Heather shows scars on her arms and says that her mother used to put cigarettes out on her skin. Whatever the true motivation was, we will probably never know. Heather has told too many stories to be a believable witness. Bystanders and friends are all biased towards one or the other. And Sheila von Wiese-Mack, socialite, millionaire, widow, friend, and mother, will never speak again. Thank you for watching Beyond Crime. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support more true crime content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below to let us know what you thought of this case.